this opportunity to be here this morning. And after this very scintillating plenary session that we had the privilege to enjoy with some very fine words of direction that His Excellency has provided to us to this forum, it's now my pleasant duty to run the second session. Actually, the plenary session has laid the foundation for deliberations for the next level, and the message is very, very clear. Never before and never again will the recycling industry be the central fulcrum for mankind's sustainable interests. And its role in saving our planet Earth can never be underestimated. The key factor is, whilst the recycling industry does business, we also do good. We also do good for society. We also do good for environment. To speak further on these subjects today, we have a very, very prominent panel here. I will also request some of my friends here. Dhavalji is already here. Mr. Virote Rote Tanchai-san, if you can please join us. Mr. Tarun Kumar Daga. Mr. Eric Tan. Ms. Caroline and Ms. Joanna Liu. Zain Bhai is already here, so there you are. So without further ado and trying to cut down time, I now request Mr. Dhaval Shah, Senior Vice President MRAI, and our the director here, very illustrious person. You heard a lot about him. He's a partner with Metco, and he's one of the largest indenting houses for secondary metals. Without further ado, may I request Mr. Dhaval Shah to kindly address us. Mr. Shah.
Thanks for that lovely introduction. There was a person by the name of Ralph Abernathy. He was an American civil rights activist and also a mentor to Martin Luther King Jr. He once very famously said that I do not know what the future holds, but I do know who holds it. So friends, as we begin this discussion on the future of metal recycling or the future of recycling, what is the way forward? I think that future, that way forward sits here in this room with us, within us, and I'll give you the reasons why. July 2023 has been officially declared as the warmest month in history. From global warming, we are slowly moving to global boiling. Polarization is becoming, is spanning out globally. So if I use this as a backdrop to predict the future, and when I say future, I don't mean by 10, 15 years from now. What I mean by future is 5 years from now. The following scenarios come to my mind, and I'll share that with you. Number one, recyclability will be a core component in manufacturing, consumption, and human lifestyles. Every product, everything that you use, be it your cars, houses, clothes, shoes, the chairs that you sit on, will have to spell and meet a recycling or recyclability criteria. Number two, the most important, the demand for recycled products will supersede the supplies. It's going to be robust. Everybody is going to be looking for recycled products. Number three, product design, manufacturing, and its applications will have to embed recyclability by legislations. Compliance and audits will increase. EPRs will become a central theme across production, across OEMs. The basic fundamental here being that you produce, you sell, you recover, you recycle. Number four, every product will have a QR code giving its carbon traceability or tagging. You know, like we have in food products, if you see the packaging, it has a nutritional value, a calorie count. Likewise, I think for every product, you will see a green dot or a red dot. The green dot signifying that it is within the carbon levels are within the thresholds that have been prescribed, and the red dot meaning it's embedding too much of carbon. Number 5, trading internally within the country and externally will need carbon certifications. Every country, every major trading bloc will have its own carbon trading systems. Next, protectionism will rise substantially over sustainable raw materials. The next round of conflicts, forget territorial issues. I think the next round of conflicts will be over clean water, clean air, thereby escalating the need of sustainable raw materials. And last, dependency on external markets. So be it for your selling, sourcing, will need constant geopolitical alignments. What I mean is that self-dependency, self-reliance, self-sustainability will be a theme that will evolve across. So now if I just take point 1 and point 2 of what I have said, which means that today recyclability will be a core component for manufacturing, and the fact that the demand for recycled products will supersede supplies, does it give you a sense of empowerment? Do you think that life has come a full circle? Because if you take a market like India, for the last 35, 40 years, we've been looked at as haphazard, polluting, fragmented, and today we are the biggest source for bringing the green revolution in the country. From penalties, we are now about to get rewarded. From being outdated and old-fashioned, we are now becoming aspirational and futuristic. So for me, I think the writing is clearly there on the wall. This is a new era dedicated to recycling and sustainability. And I say this with some tangible action as well, happening in the back end. About 15 days back, I attended a meeting from the government of India where they invited all stakeholders to come and participate, which included metal-consuming manufacturers and OEMs. And what is required now is an EPR framework for them that for recycled metals, which basically tells you that if you consume, say, 100 kilos of copper or 100 kilos of aluminum in your products, you ought to recover that back through the recycled metals. So it's a great opportunity for us as recyclers as well. I'll give you another example. In automotive industry, we are working on a framework which requires that 20% of the vehicles that are sold will be recycled by the manufacturers themselves by 2027, and this will incrementally grow by 10% each year. And not only that, the vehicle manufacturers will be required compulsorily to use 20% of recycled components or products while making those vehicles. And again, this also has to grow incrementally by 10% each year. So basically, looking at the future, I think opportunities are galore. And above everything else, to this great future, the work that you do, the industry that you represent, I would say let's give a big round of applause to the future, to the industry that we represent. Please, for all recyclers, here. Now, while we are talking about the future, it's very bright, it's very promising, but this flight of growth and success is likely to meet some turbulences as well. There will be a period of anxiety, excitement as well, and I'll tell you why. While carbon tracing and tagging is a central theme that will be played out, but I mentioned about protectionism, how that is being played out, and this whole carbon divide game, how that is spanning out, how intricate that is. I want to give you a little aspect of that as well. I'll take the example of EU. Now, it is known to all of us that in January this year, they introduced a bill in the parliament to say that exports of waste, they include scraps in waste, so exports of waste will be restricted from 2025. Non-OECD countries will not get European waste. And the lady who introduced this bill, she's a Danish member of European Parliament, she said that the waste are our resources for our environmental transformation and industry's competitiveness. Sounds logical, but here is a question or questions. Number one, if scrap is a resource material and not waste. Two is for all those people who are involved in scrap collection, processing, with much of the European industry who's there in this business. I can see Caroline here and maybe a whole lot of others who are there. I think when you block their market access, I think it halts investment. So this growth, if you don't give markets, how are the new investments supposed to come in? And third, most importantly, does circularity and sustainability and recycling is only a European agenda or a global agenda? Now let me show you a bigger picture on this carbon spin. In the first 7 months of this year, Europe has introduced 5 bills on carbon emissions, penalties, and regulations related to waste shipments. Once these bills are fully implemented, Europe is likely to earn anywhere between $500 to $800 billion annually through selling allowances, through their exchanges on carbon, on penalties, fines. If you're bringing in a product which has a higher carbon, then there's going to be a fine as well. So let's look at that. What are these new laws that are coming up from Europe? The deforestation regulation. What it says is that by 2024 and 2025, if your products are grown in an area or produced in an area where deforestation has taken place after December 2020, in an area which has got deforested, you will be charged penalties for that. Then we are talking about CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which kicks in October this year, where the first audit starts. And there, every product will have a carbon threshold to meet with if you're selling to Europe. Now, obviously, this has kicked off a big global standoff amongst countries because now every country wants to retaliate, having its own tariffs on carbon. India also is working on its own tariffs for its imports. Basically, the way forward I see is that there will be 2 different kind of worlds. One which is using CBAM and one which not. Still, there will be a lot of standoffs. I mean, if I look at the example of India, for example, 27% of our exports on steel and aluminum go to Europe. Imagine that gets scuttled once CBAM kicks in, because if you look at the cost difference, we are looking at 25 to 30% more once CBAM kicks in. Now, this is the most important part here, which affects everybody in this room, is inclusion of shipping in the CTS, in the carbon trading in Europe, which basically means that every inbound and outbound shipment from Europe will have to meet a certain criteria in terms of its carbon leakages for shipping lines. Now, first, it's going to be starting with big vessels and then the smaller vessels. So once the shipping lines are forced to pay those charges, because right now they use bunker oil and they need to move to cleaner energies, the cost difference we are looking at as anywhere between 3 and 7%, and that kind of gets passed on to you. And last, foreign subsidies. So today, any business across the world, if they are doing business with Europe, and if there are any kind of subsidies that Europe is extending to you, your government is extending to you, that will be checked, and that will not be permitted by Europe. Now, India has done a very ambitious program of PLI. Its industry has grown with PLI. That itself is under investigation by Europe. So overall, things are going to get complicated. Now, if Europe is doing that, perhaps logically it comes to our mind that why not US? US should be able to take advantage of that, of these situations, these complications, these new rules. But there's a twist to this story as well, because starting the trade wars in 2018, US also changed its approach. Number one, that there is so much of new investment, integration, forward and backward happening, that today they want to cut dependency on single big markets like China. So there is a lot of local investments coming in, a lot of local treatments, making materials fit for their own industry. 2 is the fact that they are building their own capacities. In the next 2 years, US is going to add about 1.5 million tons of capacities, new capacities in rolling and extrusion in aluminum itself. In copper, if I take the example of Orubis, they're probably about making about 800,000 tons. They are doubling up by next year to about 1.5 million tons. So what I'm trying to say is that across this theme is emerging that your raw material resources are yours and they are best put to use within the country. And this is not only Europe and US. I think if you look at other markets like Middle East, UAE, Saudi, Indonesia, Japan, every country in their own way has come up with an approach to keep raw materials within. We are talking about Critical Materials Act or Minerals Act, where every country has defined a set of products where they need to accelerate in terms of having those products which are required for energy transition, which are required for countries' growth, and linkages are being made to that. So keeping in mind all this policy churn that is coming about our way, the polarization, the protectionism that's happening, the way forward to our industry, if I had to sum this up, one, chase harder for raw materials because the demand for recycled products is going to grow multifolds. Two, make carbon tracing and tagging as part of your routine processes, get your audits, get your compliances done. External sourcing of raw materials is going to get complicated. So internal sourcing has to increase, internal recycling rates have to increase. And last but not the least, let's not be pushovers anymore. If we are talking about new investments, new industry, let's have everything state of the art, no cutting corners, because the returns or the opportunities are better when you're better invested. So once again, thank you. We hope to a great future, stronger, bigger, together. Thank you so much.
I think Dhaval Bhai's talk to us today deserves a larger round of applause than we have had so far. Please join me in applauding the very nice points that Dhaval Bhai brought out today. I think his 6-point agenda was perfect, and I think the key message that I take away is that the Indian growth story is going to be driven by new technology, new industries, and it will probably be, if we put our shoulders to the task, the most energy efficient, the least emission producer, and the most economic in the world to address these opportunities that Dhaval Bhai brought up today. And I think all that capability resides in this very room, and we will be able to meet that target sooner or later. It's now my pleasant duty to invite Mr. Virote Rotevatanchai, President Iron and Steel Institute of Thailand, to kindly speak to us. He is the president of the Iron and Steel Institute of Thailand, which was established as an independent body by Thailand's Ministry of Industry. And let us listen to his views, please. Mr. Virote Rotevatanchai.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I have to leave after my presentation because I have a urgent meeting out there. But thank you for letting me talk first. Okay. So I would like to present since you are in Thailand, I would like to present the situation in Thailand and in ASEAN, just for your information. Okay. First, this slide shows the consumption of Thailand. You see the line above is allows 16 million ton in the year 2022, and you see the bar chart. The Thailand import the steel. I mean the steel business. We import around 10 million ton per year, and we make our own production around 7 million ton per year. This means that the trend in Thailand is stable, and you see in year 2023 compared with the 2022, the market is a little bit weaker than last year. So this is the trend of steel business in Thailand. And the second part, this is the steel sector in Thailand. You see that almost all of the steel sector used in automotive industry and construction industry. And this is the trend of the construction industry. We in Thailand we grow around 2% per year. And this is the trend of automobile industry. You see, Thailand is one of the most important car maker in ASEAN. We produce around 2 million units of cars per year. And if you see before the COVID-19, our automotive production is quite high. But after COVID, we cannot reach the level as we was in before COVID. This is the scrap situation in Thailand. Thailand, we consume scrap and we import scrap around 1.6 million tons per year. We export around 359,000 tons per year. You see, in this year, 2023, our import of scrap is lower than the half of last year. What we use for scrap, we use for billet, bloom, and slab. As you see the bar chart, the after COVID-19, our billet, bloom, and slab production increased, but not in the same level before COVID. Of course, we also import scrap around 1.6 million tons per year. For year 2023 compared to 2022, our production reduced and our import reduced. This is for country in ASEAN. In ASEAN, we import scrap around 10 million tons per year, and we export some scrap around 1.5 million tons per year. And this is the trend of steel business in ASEAN. As you see the One Belt, One Road project of China, there will be the moving of the steel capacity out of China, and there's a lot of integrated new investment in ASEAN. Roughly speaking, ASEAN country consume around 70 million tons per year of the steel. But if you see, we collect the data from the research house and from CSC, Southeast Asian Iron and Steel Institute, we found that if Chinese mill invest in China, in Southeast Asia, there will be around 140 million tons. It means that the capacity of steel can be double in the next decade. So my point is that in ASEAN, we consume around only 70 million tons, but there will be a lot of investment in capacity in ASEAN in the near future. So this may create some overcapacity problem, just like in China. Of course, but there's some good news. In ASEAN now, in Thailand, we're making the steel from EAF, electric arc furnace. We do not have basic oxygen furnace in Thailand yet. So there will be more shift capacity from China in ASEAN area, but in Thailand we make from EAF. So in ASEAN, also in the past, we make the steel from EAF, but in the near future, the many investment of BOF will come into ASEAN. It means that the carbon emission per ton of steel may be changed. Of course, in EU and US, in EU now they have CBAM measure, but we have to think about other area like US, like other country will implement the cross-border carbon adjustment in the future. This is the trend. So in Thailand, we have a little bit high cost of electricity, but of course the trend of electricity now going to the green electricity portion. So those points will become the key issue that Thai business and Asian business still have to think about in the coming future. Of course, the recycled material is one of the good solution for the country and for the this region. So I hope that we can do something better for the recycled business. That's all of my presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Virote Ratanachai, for this very good presentation on Thailand and on the potential of the ASEAN community here. But I can see your key message was recycling material is a good solution to many of life's problems. And we thank you for that view. Please join me in once again thanking Mr. Virote for his presentation. It's now my pleasant duty to call Mr. Tarun Kumar Daga, CEO Tata Steel, for this presentation. He is a graduate from the Birla Institute of Technology and Science, and he was earlier the Executive Director at Tin Plate Company of India. Yours.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. First of all, Sawadi Krap. Welcome to Thailand in the Ton Su Prate Thai Krap. What I will be speaking upon is something about the steel industry, but to speak after Khun Virot, it will be a very difficult thing to do, but I will make an attempt. The first subject is, of course, environment. As Khun Virot said, that we do not have any blast furnaces here. So in terms of decarbonization opportunities, it is about electrical efficiencies and using electricity from different sources other than the normal sources of electricity. And as we see, these are newspaper clippings of yesterday, today, and over the last 1 month. Every day, there is environment, there is climate change subjects on the newspaper headlines, even here in Thailand as well. So, and we can see that even in India, there are movements towards green. Some of the clips which are here are from the material recycling circulations which are there in the hands of all of us. So this is a subject which is, as the heading says, burning. It is not going to go away, and perhaps there are opportunities as well. And the faster we move in this direction, the better we would be. As blast furnaces would have +2 somewhere around cubic meters per ton of crude steel. Electric arc furnace, induction furnace is around 0.6. So there are clear-cut opportunities, but at the same time, we need to work more towards electric energy efficiencies and towards using more and more renewables in our electricity consumption. So environment is a subject which is going to be there, and it will manifest itself not just as air, but water, but dust-related matters, electricity consumption, or energy consumptions, as I already mentioned. So the first thing for the steel industry, and perhaps this is where I will end as well, the environment-related matters will become the most important operating parameter for anybody as a stakeholder in the steel industry. Supply chain, all of you are familiar. We have heard about scrap, and the issues are about scrap. Previous speakers spoke about how countries are going about securitizing their waste, which means scrap. So supply chain issues will play out. We can see the changes which are taking place arising on account of geopolitical tensions, how each country, each nation, each organization is working towards securing their supply chains. We are, what is shown here as articles on the slide are something to do with critical minerals. Critical minerals are going to be very important for all of us in our daily lives for the future. We all are aware about it, and we can see that even the government of India is promulgating laws around this subject as well. So the supply chain in all its issues, there could be supply chain for scrap, there could be supply chain for ferroalloys, the waste-related supply chain we have already spoken about. So this is something which is going to be extremely, extremely important for all of us as we move forward. Coming to the short term, we are all in running industries, but the short term, there are demand issues in Southeast Asia. All of you from India would be familiar with demand government-related project and investments. We all spoke about the growth story of India, but here in Southeast Asia, in the short term, there are issues around demand, and there are newspaper clips which are there, which speaks about demand issues. And when we speak about demand, of course, what comes to mind is the situation in China. All of you are perhaps more familiar than myself what is happening in China, and these are the newspaper headlines occupying all of us here. The deflation issues, the real estate property issues, the trust bank issues, these are all playing out in the public domain. And why concerning us? Because China has half the world's steel capacity and production. So whatever happens in China, there is an impact around this region. And that's the reason why we're all concerned. In some measure, this was spoken about earlier, but I would just like to leave it that we have seen turbulences, and we will continue to see turbulences. There were turbulences over the last 2 decades that we have seen. We have seen a turbulence on account of a disease over the last 2 or 3 years. There are geopolitical tensions. So there is volatility which is going to be part of our lives. We are all aware about it. And some of what I have listed is something which is playing out. There is increased spending on defense across the world. And those industries who are perhaps supplying to defense or defense-allied industries would understand and appreciate there are opportunities around there. Cybersecurity risks, as we move more and more towards technology in our daily lives, we are all familiar with the cyber security matters and how critical it is to ensure that we work on this. Technology supremacy, we are all aware the geopolitical tensions, how it is playing out is around technology matters. Financial system risks, we already spoke about. And the one thing which we have not discussed perhaps, but which is there in every nation, and it is the social divide between the haves and the have-nots. That's something which all industries, wherever they are, would have to contend with and live through it. Closer to this region, we already are aware about the carbon border adjustment mechanism. Yes, there will be challenges for many industries across the world, but I guess there will be opportunities as well for those who have less carbon emissions in their supply chain. In Southeast Asia, there are commitments towards net zero which are being made, and there are, because of the development of this region, there are of course talks of steelmaking capacities in this region. In Thailand, there is a great focus on infrastructure building. All of you are familiar with the kind of infrastructure Thailand has built up over the years. It's beautiful driving across the country, highways, motorways, expressways, and so on. It's absolutely wonderful the kind of investments the country is making in infrastructure, and that effort will continue here. In the short term, there are concerns on liquidity, there are inflation, deflation issues being spoken about, but I guess these are issues which happen in a cyclical manner. But the real story here is the tremendous investment in infrastructure, and Thailand has also formulated a draft climate change act. And this draft climate change act speaks about citizens' rights, It speaks about the greenhouse gas emissions and creating databases and an entire policy framework around that. So Thailand is taking tremendous steps. So two basic stories which where opportunities will lie is the infrastructure spend and the climate change work that is unfolding here in Thailand. This has already been spoken about. Over the last few years, there has been a drop in terms of the overall steel consumption which has taken place, but these are short cyclical phenomena which will take place and move forward. As far as the rolling mill capacities are concerned, there is a bit of overcapacity which is there, and some of you to whom we speak about scrap supplies, now you can understand when we speak about scrap prices, the kind of scrap prices we talk about and the kind of scrap prices that all of you quote about in the discussion. So this is the reason why we speak what we speak, and I hope you will trust and understand and appreciate our position when you discuss scrap prices with us. The last is an introduction to Tata Steel Thailand. We are a 1.2 million ton capacity facility. We produce and sell approximately 1.2 million tons per annum. Over the years, we have 3 plants, all electric arc furnace based, and that's where, and we have, in terms of rebar making, we have downstream operations as well. And in terms of wire rod making, we do supply at the high end, which is tire cord and bead wire, which is the auto industry. So just to conclude, I'm sure you all know this, just would like to emphasize on the subject of supply chain and environment. The volatility will be there as we move forward, but at the end of the day, the way we manage our supply chain across all its facets and the way we address environmental issues is what is going to determine success or competitiveness for the future. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope when you are here, the delegates who are here, enjoy Thailand. It's a beautiful country. I hope you appreciate the sense of cleanliness, the orderliness, the discipline in daily lives. You must have seen there's no honking. And there are beautiful fruits which are there in Thailand. I hope you'll all appreciate that. And Thailand is not just the beaches that we are familiar with, but drive across the country is a wonderful drive up north as well. So I hope you enjoy Thailand, and thank you once again for the opportunity for inviting me here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daga, for that very nice overview of the industry here, as well as the opportunities that tourism in Thailand offers to many of our delegates who are already here. But I think the key message is the requirement to decarbonize the steel sector, the presence of China or the absence of China in the global market, and of course, the developments in the region, which will require more materials and will be a key consumer of material in managing volatility in the region. It's now my pleasant duty to invite Ms. Caroline Grenhals to join in. Caroline, yeah. My apologies to you. I'm sorry. Next in line is Mr. Eric Tan Boonhai, founder and president of the Malaysian Non-Ferrous Metals Association. My apologies for that. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I would like to thank MRAI for this platform, and I appreciate each and every one of you still in this room. Before I go to the main topic, allow me to briefly introduce, let me briefly introduce our Malaysia associations. We are a leading association in Malaysia, advocating for government support in our industry. We have numerous dialogues, meetings, and with the government agency. Importantly, 2 significant meetings were conducted in the Speaker office within Malaysia Parliament. These photos were taken during our meeting in Parliament. And I serve as a CEO of this company. We manufacture copper ingots, copper rods, copper anodes, and we make and trade aluminum ingots. Topic for today, raw material sustainability in Malaysia's future prospects. In 1960, our economy was predominantly agricultural. As we transitioned to current economy model, industrializations started to play a more significant role. Industrialization is a manufacture of products, especially advanced products made from copper and aluminum, the non-ferrous metals. Today, the focus is not only on advanced product, but advanced product of low carbon footprint and eco-friendly products. In this context, recycled metals or secondary metals are not just alternative. They are strategic minerals and every nations are competing for them. Now the secondary metals or the recycled metals can be divided into 2 categories. One is imported into Malaysia, another one is locally generated. This slide shows Malaysia locally generated waste and scrap metals. I won't go deep into these locally generated materials due to the limited volume, which doesn't match today's Malaysia's processing capacity. We cannot rely on local generated materials. Therefore, we should shift our focus from locally generated materials to imported materials. Malaysia imported recycled materials, sustainability, future prospect. How does it look like? Optimistic, pessimistic, uncertain. The answer is uncertain. Depends upon 5 factors. First factor, Malaysia import policy. I would like to talk about its background a bit. Until 2018, Malaysia has not implemented any policy regarding the importation of recycled materials. This changed when China bans the import of waste and scrap into its territory. A surge of foreign waste and scraps arriving at Malaysia ports and overloading many industrial facilities. Even agricultural lands was repurposed illegally to accommodate this influx. To protect our environment from negative effects, especially from low quality plastic waste, Malaysia authority took actions. In January 2020, Department of Environment introduced the first import restrictions. And in December 2021, CIRIM, our national certification and inspection body, implemented further restrictions. And according to CIRIM, this second policy takes a precedence over the former one. The primary distinction between the 2 guidelines is as follows. DOE permitted 0.3% of hazardous waste, whereas CIRIM mandates 0%. Additionally, the first guideline didn't specify purity standard for imported materials, but the CIRIM require a 94.75 purity. Looking at this guideline, what lies ahead for cables or ICW with a copper content below 94.75%? What about the future prospect for mid-bores or shredded electric motors, which only have a 20% copper content? The answer, there is no promising future for them. Let's we look at this statistic displayed on the slide. We can see that 2020 to 2022, the export copper bearing scrap from US to Malaysia decreased by 62%. This is the result of a restrictive import policy. We, the Malaysia Non-Ferrous Metal Associations, we support government efforts to regulate our industry to comply with rules and regulations, but we disagree with the restrictive import policy. Placing too much restriction on this industry could hinder Malaysia's ability in manufacturing advanced products. The ramifications of this could be significant, especially given the importance of these minerals in today's advanced products. Second factors that will affect or influence our future prospects, source country export policy. This second factor may have an influence on our future prospect. EU policy and lately Japan tightened the export policy. This could harm our future prospect. I won't go into detail. Discussing them could take hours. Factor number 3, policy of competing import nation. This factor may have an influence on our future prospect positively or negatively. Example of positive impact on our prospect, 2018, China's policy presents a golden opportunity for Malaysia, India, and Thailand. However, 2023, China shows a signs of reopening to non-ferrous metals. This may not be good news for Malaysia's future prospect. Factor number 4, international legal frameworks. This including a free trade agreement, FTA. This factor could have either benefit or harm our future prospects. Malaysia, factor number 5 is a Malaysia business ecosystem. Our nations enjoy natural strategic business conditions. Our strategic location between China's South China Sea and Indian Oceans places us in a very advantaged position between two economic giants, China and India. This geographic uniquely positions Malaysia to bridge the gap between these two giants. Moreover, the freight costs from regions like USA, Europe, Australia, Japan to Malaysia is relatively more affordable compared to many of our neighboring countries. Such conditions amplify our competitive advantage in the global market. Malaysia, with its 3 primary ethnic groups, Malay, Chinese, and India, we have a deep understanding of cultures and languages of both India and China. This also uniquely positions us to bridge the gaps within these two powerhouses. Between 2018, following China's import ban, and 2022, prior to Malaysia's import curve, there was a marked surge in recycled material entering Malaysia. This period witnessed a significant investment in our recycling sector, leading to rapid industrial growth. Given our advanced recycling infrastructure and substantial capacity today, Malaysia stands to become a leading non-ferrous metals center in Asia. The future prospect of recycled material in Malaysia hinges on these 5 factors. We have direct influence over the first factors. However, factors number 2, 3, and 4 largely beyond our control. The 5th factor is a natural advantage inherent to Malaysia. If Malaysia government provide the right support, the industry could attract substantial investment throughout, from upstream to downstream. Thank you all of your patience and taking time to listen. It's been an honor speaking to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, for highlighting some of the policy aspects of Malaysia and how it will impact the Malaysian industrial ecosystem. And I think he brought out these very important points on the export and import policies, the business ecosystems governing the entire industry. And we are thankful to him for his talk today. Please join me in applauding his speech today to us. It's now my pleasant duty to invite Ms. Caroline Kranhals, Director at the Belgian Scrap Terminal, to come and speak to us. She is a pioneer for high-quality recycling, and they're a market leader, and all of us know about the Belgian Scrap Terminal exhaustively. So I'll not take more time, and Madam, the floor is yours.
Hello. Okay, it's fine. Okay, problem. There is a technical problem, and they don't have my slides, but I don't know if there is still. It is sent. It is sent. You have them?
We'll just wait.
Okay.
We'll wait till this is sorted out. I'll ask
Okay.
Joanne to speak. Yes, there's a little bit of a problem on the slide. So in order to save time, may I request Ms. Joanne Liu to kindly address us. She's the Assistant to the Secretary General MRAI. And hello, and Joanne, the floor is yours, madam.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It fills me with great pleasure and honor to stand here. I want to express my sincere attitude to MRAI to extending the invitation. And on behalf of CMRA, I'm glad to share our insights on China's recycling non-ferrous metals industry. There are 4 parts. The first 2 parts will talk about the standards and the trends of China's recycling non-ferrous metals industry. And the third part will talk about the path of international collaborative development. And finally, I will talk about CMRA and our annual convention. The standards. The cumulative consumption of non-ferrous metals in China exceeds 700 million tons. The cumulative output of recycling non-ferrous metals has reached 130 million tons, contributing a quarter of the raw materials for the non-ferrous metals industry in China. In last year, The total output of recycling copper, aluminum, lead, and zinc was 16.55 million tons with a growth rate of 5.3%. In the first half of this year, the output of recycling non-ferrous metal reached 8.68 million tons, with 1.9 million tons of recycling copper, 4.65 million tons of recycling aluminum, 1.9 million tons of, 1.48 million tons of recycling lead, and the recycling zinc was 650,000 tons. According to incomplete statistics, in last year, there were more than 50 recycling non-ferrous metal projects that have obtained environmental impact assessment approved and under construction that involved a production capacity of nearly 30 million tons. Extensive growth in aluminum slag recycling and power battery recycling projects. According to research, in last year, the domestic recycling volume of scrap copper, aluminum, lead, and zinc was about 13.75 million tons. This figure was only 6.65 million tons in 10 years ago. In the first half of this year, the domestic recycling volumes of scrap copper, aluminum, lead, batteries, and zinc were about 1.2 million tons, 3.9 million tons, 2.3 million tons, and 650,000 tons respectively, with a total of 8.05 million tons. Compared to same period, it was basically flat with a slight increase. High-quality recycling raw materials from overseas continue to play an important supplementary role. In last year, China imported 1.77 million tons of recycling copper, brass raw materials, and 1.77 million tons of recycling casting aluminum alloy raw materials. Some copper and aluminum scraps from the United States and Europe were pre-treated in Southeast Asia to meet the Chinese standards of recycling copper and aluminum raw materials and entered into China again in the form of general trade. The recycling copper and aluminum raw materials imported from Southeast Asia, Japan, and South Korea, or 713,900 tons and 695,000 tons respectively, accounted for 41% and 46%. But the US is still an important source of imports. The recycling copper and aluminum raw materials reported from the United States were 321,000 tons and 165,900 tons, accounting for 18% and 11%. Industrial presents three main characteristics. First one, accelerated integration of upstream and downstream in the industrial chain. Like primary smelting enterprises in the non-ferrous sector are speeding up their entry into the field of the recycling metals. Second, transition towards to high quality products, like the direct utilization ratio of recycling copper continue to increase. Also significant approach to dual carbon goals. The second is trends. By 2025, the planned production of recycling non-ferrous metals is sighting to reach 20 million tons, including 4 million tons of recycling copper, 11.5 million tons of recycling aluminum, 2.9 million tons of recycling lead, and 1.5 million tons of recycling zinc. Currently, there is a strong possibility of achieving these targets ahead of schedule. By 2025, the aluminum of copper consumption for new energy vehicles is expected to exceed 1.7 million tons and 700,000 tons respectively. Also, the additional aluminum and copper demand for solar and wind power is projected to exceed 1.5 million tons and 1 million tons respectively. The usage of lithium carbonate for lead-ion batteries is anticipated to exceed 800 tons. Also, we have some technology level improved. Policies such as action plan for carbon peak before 2030 propose to improve the recycling, sorting, and processing network of scrap non-ferrous metal resources. The annual amount of recycling non-ferrous metal scrap in China is estimated at about 60 million tons for the next 3 years. The third part, I would like to talk about the path of international collaborative development. The global trade volume of recycling copper raw materials can reach nearly 6 million tons, where the trade volume of recycling aluminum raw materials is close to 10 million tons. Cross-regional circulation of recycling non-ferrous metals raw materials has formed a trade pattern with exports from North America and Europe and imports by Asian countries as the main focus. The USA, the largest exporter of recycling non-ferrous metal raw materials. India, the largest importer of recycling aluminum raw materials. China, the largest importer of recycling copper materials. EU's European waste shipment regulations require companies to apply for end-of-waste certification in order to export goods to China. Malaysia raises the recycling metal standards. Thailand, the import and export volume are constantly increasing. Companies like Novelis, Hydro, Apple, Coca-Cola, they are using the usage of recycling aluminum materials in their products. China imports of recycling copper raw materials and recycling aluminum raw materials from Southeast Asia accounted for 23% and 31% respectively. The primary sources from these imports are mainly Malaysia and Thailand. Since 2018, a significant trend has emerged where Chinese companies have been increasingly venturing abroad to invest in pre-treating facilities, yards, and even industry parks across various Southeast Asian countries such as Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, and so on. Like the Malaysia-China Quantum Industrial Park is a significant cooperation project between the government and China and Malaysia. Also has lots of Chinese companies overseas to have their subsidiary in Malaysia and Thailand. And finally, I would like to talk about our CMRA and our annual convention. China Non-Ferrous Metals Industry Association Recycling Metal Branch is our full name, was established in 2020, has more than 500 members, both domestically and overseas, serves as an important consultant and assistance to government decision-making. Also, we have some close communication with other important organizations such as BRA3, BMR, JRA, and MRAI. Lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our annual convention. This year, our annual convention will be held in Foshan, Guangzhou from 7 to 9 November, and we sincerely invite you to come to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne, for that very interesting presentation on the China's sector for non-ferrous metals. You brought out some very interesting points on policy, the kind of work that's happening in China, and particularly on the ideas on global collaboration. So whilst we're waiting for the presentation to load, it's my pleasant duty to invite Zain Bhai for your presentation. He's the Managing Director of the Nathani Group, and he's also the Vice President of the Material Recycling Association of India. Zain Bhai, it's yours.
Thank you, Sujit ji. Respected dignitaries on the dais with me and all delegates, warm welcome to Bangkok. Just wanted to share some thoughts on what's happening on the Indian recycling policy and advocacy front. So in the last few years, the Indian government has been very proactive in terms of policy advocacy on the recycling front. We've heard from various speakers, including Dhawal, who have voiced their concerns that more and more countries today are working towards protectionism of vital raw materials. And this, of course, is going to have a tremendous impact on large import-based economies like India. But we do realize this. It's not that the Indian government and the Indian industry has just been sitting silent over the last few years. Our government has also been framing policies to boost domestic recycling so that over the next decade or so, our industry moves further away from being import-driven to more of a self-sufficient industry overall. There have been various policies, rules, and regulations that have been framed and are in the process of being framed right now that will eventually benefit the Indian industry, the ferrous, the non-ferrous, and the overall material recycling industry. Some of these policies, like we've heard from speakers in the morning, are the steel scrap policy, the National Non-Ferrous Metals Recycling Framework. There's EPR on plastics, tires, e-waste, and batteries, action plans on circular economy. There's the end-of-life vehicle scrappage policy also. MRAI has recently concluded with JPC, which is again comes under the Ministry of Steel, a very crucial study on the domestic generation of ferrous scrap. We appointed PwC to do this for us, and they've conducted this study. MRAI is also the knowledge partner for circular economy park policy for the state of Maharashtra within India. So the reason for sharing all this is that in the short term, we do realize and we are cognizant of the fact that we are going to be interdependent on the larger exporting countries for our vital raw materials. But as an association, MRAI, and as a country, we are very confident that India will be poised to lead a recycling revolution in the next decade going ahead, driven by the 6 R's policy as laid out by the Government of India. With that in mind, I would like to also take this opportunity that yes, we've come for our first ever international trip to Bangkok, and it's so far turning out to be an excellent conference and a great success. But we do have our annual International Material Recycling IMRC conferences also coming up. The next one is going to be in the City of Joy, which is in Kolkata in the eastern part of India. It is going to be from January 24th, 25th, 2023. And I look forward to welcoming all of you. As Amar mentioned earlier today, we've crossed 800 registrations in Bangkok. We're hoping to hit close to 3,000 registrants at our IMRC conference in January. So I look forward to you all continuing to support MRAI. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zain, for that quick overview of the sector. Whilst we are going to wait for a few minutes for the presentation to load, let us take this opportunity to ask for some questions from the Parliament. Or are we ready? Yeah, okay. So we have the presentation in place. May I now request once again, Carolyn, for your comments, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, well, my heart beats for urban mining because I'm the 4th generation at the Belgian Scrap Terminal Group. Each year, we recycle approximately 1.5 million tons of ferrous and non-ferrous metals. That's equivalent to roughly 150 Eiffel Towers every year. We are a leading group in Europe and ship worldwide from the port of Antwerp. More than 100 years ago, my great-grandfather traded in scrap metal because there was a metal shortage. As the years went by, we became the cleaners of our welfare society. Recycling, urban mining existed for many generations and will remain for many more to come. But where are we, the urban miners, the recycling industry now in a world that awakens our soul for circular economy? We as recyclers, as urban miners, are always situated at the end of the production chain, but far too little as the breeding ground for bringing new and more sustainable products into the world. We are the link that must complete the production circle, out of necessity and out of sustainability. How is the way forward to connect the final dots in completing the circle? Over the past 30 years, as global thinking increased alongside environmental regulations, we urban miners expanded our activities to cater to the needs of the global industry. Economy and ecology were strong and went hand in hand. As scrap metal recyclers, we grew to become a value-driven company. And as you can see, a sturdy, beautiful tree. When a container of waste arrives at our site, this container mainly holds metals. But nevertheless, it is a patchwork of other materials that need to be processed too. We process what others produced. And I refer to the difficulties we have today with batteries. Of course, portable energy is a possible answer to reduce CO2 emissions. But were the risks considered? Batteries in our scrap cause fires in our companies today. Knowing what is in it doesn't mean you can get it out, that you can separate it. What if we said, you are what you recycle? We are recycling pioneers. Today, we valorize 100% of a damaged shipping container, 98% of a discarded washing machine, and 97% of an end-of-life vehicle. Those last few percentages are our daily recycling challenge. Through our urban mining process, we are able to separate ferrous metals that are 100% fully recyclable materials. What is left is a mix of metals and light fraction. This is where the art of recycling starts. A succession of machines such as screens, eddy currents, induction sorting systems, optic and laser sorters, flotation techniques optimize the purity of our final reclaimed materials, such as aluminium, copper, plastic, stainless steel, wood, and many more. Optimizing our mechanical and digital processes allows us to recycle more waste streams in better ways. But we still go further. Completing the circle in a circular economy is still a way off. There are still dots to be connected. Now, just as with the recyclers, the technological evolution challenges innovators to expand their horizons and create new possibilities. Producers increasingly rely on eco-design in their search for materials, so they can evolve from a fashionable slogan to sustainable eco-design. The consumers and politicians, they are becoming aware of the issue of climate change. Each stakeholder, as you can see, is doing their utmost to innovate and is developing their own ecological mindset, their new normal. As you can see, each stakeholder, innovators, producers, consumers, recyclers, politicians, they have a unique tree. Some trees are touching each other, and it looks like we are building a magnificent forest. But each tree grows in its own planter and is independently active because each stakeholder deals with different challenges. And then diving into the world of the politicians, we see a variety of trees on its own. Regulations differ depending on where you are in the world. Even the classification of waste materials varies from country to country. In the EU, the awareness of climate change creates a current tsunami of new regulations, and they have been pointed out already, but I will, give you a few of the important initiatives. It's the EU Green Deal, the new Circular Action Plan, the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, the regulation on end-of-life vehicles, the regulation on electric and electronic equipment, on batteries, the Critical Raw Materials Act. They aim to achieve better product design, eco-design, to increase the lifetime of products and facilitate the assembly and recycling at the end of life. Mandatory recycled content targets that will contribute to pull the demand of secondary raw materials. And very important, leveling the playing field between primary and secondary raw materials. It will reduce the use of substances of very high concern in products, and the creation of an overarching database which will include more information on products for both consumers and waste operators, and increases the transparency from producers. But each regulation is doing its most to innovate and to create a more circular and carbon neutral mindset, the new normal. As you can see, each regulation and each product concerned has also a unique tree. Some trees are touching each other, and it looks like we are building a magnificent forest. But each tree grows in its own planter and is independently active, because each regulation deals with different challenges. And for sure, steel recycling plays a key role in transitioning towards more circular and carbon neutral steel, since substituting iron ore with steel scrap from recycling results in well-documented environmental benefits. But we have to safeguard free and fair trade for steel scrap, which is far by the most sustainable raw material used in steelmaking, regardless of where it is produced across the EU and the rest of the world. And the waste shipment regulation will ask the help and audits of each of the stakeholders to keep our materials moving in a world economy. New materials, New materials find their way to new products. Digital innovations are there to help us. We are starting to think about the ecological impact, but will the EU regulatory framework be the answer to develop a completely closed circular economy? As long as we do not all grow in the same soil, building an ecosystem will remain an incomplete circle. So, how can we connect the final dots, the ending and the beginning? The famous leadership writer Stephen Covey stated that leaders must lead with the end in mind. What is the end we need to have in mind when we put new products in the market? They say, you are what you eat, but we are also what we produce, what we throw away, what we recycle. The question is, are we prepared to lead with this new ending in mind? Are we ready to connect the final dots? Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn, for that wonderful presentation. I think straight from the heart. And it's obviously 4 generations speaking in one voice. And I think that voice is carried across to all of us who are present here. I think the key takeaway I get from your message is that must be free and fair trade in scraps and raw materials, and it should not be just contained in one country or the other or another region. This brings us to the end of this presentation. So I think we may have a little time for a couple of questions if there are any. And then you have a... Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I actually have a question for Caroline. Thank you for the presentation, Caroline. One, we've heard of CBAM and everything else that's happening in the EU. Dhaval's been keeping MRAI quite proactively updated. So we all are seeing it from the perspective of the importer. There are serious concerns on how India might be able to meet its requirements in the short term, etc., being such an import-driven market for various raw materials. Can you share a little perspective from the exporter's point of view, actually? What are some of your concerns? What are some of your challenges that you foresee with CBAM coming and all the other various EU regulations that you shared in your presentation?
Well, yeah, I assume that also as you have concerns as importers, we have concerns as exporters. I think that we have to be realistic, and it is a tsunami, and after every tsunami you always have to look afterwards what is damaged and what do you have to rebuild and how do you get through it. And so I expect, as being an exporter, we will need the help of everyone to keep on having that fair trade. We will have to do audits. And if the importer is ready to work on it, then it can only also reinforce. I want to see the positive part on it. We have to be realistic as well. When tomorrow we close the borders in Europe, then we don't have the capacity to treat ourselves what we recycle today. We are lucky that in Europe we have already a lot of recycling, and I hope that we realize that the government will realize that we have to keep it, and also for that the borders will have to stay open. But okay, it is the new way forward, it's the new normal, and together we will be strong. That's why I make the comparison also with the forests. Because, yeah, you cannot stay in a planter and you have to work together. So I think for both sides, importers, exporters today, a lot of question marks. I don't have all the answers here on the floor, for sure not. But there is a certain period before we are there. And yeah, let's jointly see and give each other the hands or take away the planters and make that nice forest and that it continues.
Any questions from the audience, please? Sorry,
So going through Mr. Eric Ten's presentation, I probably would have a question half for Eric and half for Joanne to explain. One of the interesting points you mentioned, Eric, in your presentation, as a challenge, you see that China is showing signs of getting back to its old policy where importation opens up. If I see the journey of the last 2-3 years or 5 years in China, there is a lot of mobilization in terms of using internal resources. So can you please explain what exactly you meant by this new development that you are hearing about? And Joanne, if you can give your perspective on that what is that those new signals are and the reasoning behind that. So Eric, first you and then maybe Joanne.
We can see the signs of the China opening, and we just get one example, the copper number 2. And if you still remember that this copper number 2, probably about 2 years ago, there's most of the such copper are not able to send to China, or China rejects those containers. But for the last probably one year, I think quite a lots of copper number 2 go to China. So we can see even you look at let's say about a year ago, we can see even steel scraps used to be rejected or have a problem to send to China, but China accept them lately. So we can feel that the signs of opening is there.
Actually, China is not reopening the market. We just have same requirements for high quality raw materials. We just extend the categories to import to China. Like we revised recycling casting alloy raw materials, recycling copper, recycling brass standards. Yeah, so we expanded more categories than before because this year we released the latest standards and we included bronze alloy and white alloy, white copper alloy into the list. So I think it's not reopening. Yeah, we just more requirements on high quality raw materials. Yeah.
Any questions from the, yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lee Allen from Fast Markets. Just picking up on that last point about the situation with China and Malaysia, Mr. Eric Tan, I just wanted to check with yourself, because you said that China is showing possible opening for non-ferrous imports, and that would not be so good for Malaysia. What's the reason that that would not be so good for Malaysia? Is that because it would be more difficult for Malaysia to secure supply if China's in the market as well for the same products? Thank you.
If you look at the materials that sent to Malaysia and the materials sent to China, for example, again back to the same example, the copper number 2. Today we have to compete with China to purchase these higher grades materials. So when China rejects container, such container to China, then we have a positive impact that we can receive more container in China, in Malaysia.
Thank you. And just one more question I had on a slightly different topic to ask Mr. Daga with regards to the Thailand steel industry. We've seen that Southeast Asia is going to have a massive explosion in blast furnace capacity, as you mentioned, and indeed in India as well, where there's going to be a massive increase in coal and iron ore-based steel making in the next few years. What is the reason, in your view, that Thailand is not going down this route? Do you expect it to in the future? And as a separate point, how can recyclers maximize steel scrap intake in the coming blast furnaces, both in Southeast Asia and in India? Thank you.
So as far as Thailand is concerned, as you saw through Konvirot's presentation, the total steel demand is around somewhere close to 16 to 19 million tons, and roughly distributed across long and flat, approximately 7-8 million tons of long and the rest as flat products. The other thing is, in terms of raw material security, most of the places where you do see blast furnaces and those which are competitive, normally one sees either one or two of the raw materials being part of that nation. So I don't know whether that's the answer there, but these are the facts on the table which one can use to interpret one way or the other. As far as the other countries investing in blast furnaces is concerned, I wouldn't be in a position to answer at this point of time. I would perhaps be able to answer related to Thailand. But as developing nations, the key of the crux of the matter is that there is not so much of scrap available which can be fed towards building the steel making requirements which are required for the infrastructure building for all the developing nations. So that's where the dichotomy is in terms of managing the decarbonization efforts and managing the growth aspirations of each nation. And what some of the nations are doing, and even they may be developing countries as well, they are picking up the threads of investing in hydrogen technologies. It is expensive, as everyone knows at this point of time in the technology life cycle, it is expensive. But nations are taking steps, and developing nations are taking steps towards building on hydrogen and towards building of the carbon capture units. So it's a balance which has to be struck between growth aspirations, between decarbonization efforts, and looking forward to the future towards uh, making and reaching the net zero targets. Uh, Most of the countries where such expansions are taking place, they have already spoken or committed to net zero targets by in the foreseeable future over the next 2 decades or 3 decades or thereabouts. So it's a balance which has to be struck for the nations. But as far as Thailand specific is concerned, I thought I'll just put the facts and leave it for interpretation.
Okay. I think we are now running out of time. So, is there one more question? Sanjay bhai, please.
Yeah, Tarunji, what kind of sort of grades of scrap you are using, and what is the combination, I mean, percentage of scrap you are using in your furnaces? Regarding it, I mean to say, how much scrap you are using, number of, I mean to say, percentage of scrap into your furnaces, like 40% scrap, rest is a DRI, sponge iron, or pig iron.
So, not much of DRI and pig iron that we use. The DRI is mostly that we use is when we make special grades of wire rods. At that moment, we use bit of DRI. You can understand the obvious reasons for thereof. But for rebar making, it's essentially scrap, HMS, 80, 20, light scrap, clean scrap, all the process scrap which is available. That's for rebar making, but for when we come to wire rod making, it is sometimes pig iron and sometimes DRI is of course used because of the end product being in mind.
What exactly he wanted to ask is, what is the scrap charge you are using in your blast furnaces in Thailand, in your company?
We don't have blast furnaces in
Or
Thailand.
induction furnace.
We have electric arc furnaces
okay.
only. There are electric arc furnaces and there are induction furnaces capacity in Thailand. There are no other steel making or billet making options.
Thank you, Dharanji. My very small question to Carolina, since you are the fourth generation recyclers, you are the fourth generation recyclers. What is your suggestion to the younger companies for the urban mining and how we can improve ourselves?
I heard it right. What is my, what can I?
What's your suggestion, since you are a fourth generation recyclers?
Yes.
And your presentation was so touching. It was so nice. It's so directly from your heart. What are your suggestions to the young recyclers, how we can improve?
To continue and to believe in it. I think indeed, when I look back, we exist now 100 years in the family. And I've seen that sometimes we only think that now recycling exists. It has existed for 100 years. And to believe that we can do it. We have a lot of, indeed, a tsunami of regulations, not only in the EU, also in the rest of the world, challenges with climate change. And we cannot forget that the products that we get now in our houses and in the industry and in our working place are more difficult also to recycle. And that are all the challenges. And only if we believe in it with our passion, we can do it. And I believe that we can do it for the next 100 and even more years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think this brings us to the last point. Any more questions? No. Well, in which case, can I just request there's somebody else? Please go ahead. This will be the last question, please.
Hello. Yeah, Mehul Thakka. I would like to just ask a question for Caroline. Actually, we have been already discussing regard over the rarest metal. Normally, as per my knowledge, the Europe is the best technology for the rarest metals. So what's your focus for the futures? Matlab, how we are going to just focus, how the Europe is developing on the base of the rarest metals. I can give you some examples like tantalum, on but the lithium is the lithium too. So what you will suggest for the India to just go for it?
For sure. One of my slides was close the loop, open the world. Close the loop, open the world.
Okay.
And I think that is, well, it is a challenge to close the loop. Close the loop is that we can we recycle 100% of everything that is being produced? Also, we have to know that in the recycling, we are time travelers. What comes on our sites has been produced before. It has been produced on moments when we didn't know what was going to be legislation of today. So hopefully, and no, I'm very thankful of the fact that digital evolution and technology goes that fast, so we can do it. And I believe that we cannot only, I'm going to do something very impolite, that today sometimes we think in Europe that we are the only one who are that far in recycling. I don't believe it. We can all do it together, and it doesn't matter. Maybe we have it already in Europe more established, but I'm willing to help others to do it also in the open the world, the rest of the world, to close the loop.
That's great.
Yeah. This is Jayaprakash from Statement. I have one question for Dhaval sir. So in FY23, if you look into the stats, means India crossed 10 million ton in imports in terms of ferrous scrap. But if we talk about non-ferrous scrap, especially the copper front, and in first half of 2023, the import of copper scrap was less as compared to the import of ingots and anodes. So how do you see the scrap uses, especially in the copper segment, sir? Means how it is going to change in future?
I think if you look at the augmentation of capacities, or if you look at the copper industry, in terms of primary, secondary combined, we're probably producing about close to just a little less than 1 million tons of copper units. I'm not taking copper alloys into account, the brass bronzes, we leave it aside. But if you look at the copper alloys, now today, for example, if we consider brass, I think it's a copper zinc alloy, and in that we import about monthly about close to 18,000 tons each month. So what I'm saying is that as India as an industry, I think we need to understand that today copper industry is a combination of things, whereas pure copper scrap or the pure copper scrap usage as such in terms of material availability, it's a bit restrictive. We use our internal sourcing. We were never big on copper scrap imports. But side by side, if you look at copper alloys, that's substantially grown because that's really the core of our industry as such. So just to answer to your point, yes, ferrous has substantially grown, but I think copper is playing out its own story. I think there are new capacities that are being added. You have already heard of Adani's plant, but again, these are primary plants. I generally feel that copper industry will be catered through primary, more or less, but copper alloys, definitely the scrap usage is going to grow multifolds. And I think in brass and bronze, we're already seeing that, and I'm sure that trend will continue. I personally see that we're seeing a growth of almost 7 to 8% year-on-year basis as far as copper alloys is concerned.
Any more? Right, I think this brings us to the end of this session. For a quick roundup, may I now request all our panelists to share a view in about 30 seconds each, so then we can conclude the session. And then it's my pleasure to invite Shravanji to deliver the vote of thanks. Any last comments?
No, thanks. Just enjoy Thailand. I hope all the 800 delegates who are here are going to enjoy the day's stay here. Thank you.
Carolyn?
Let's all believe in the future for our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Dhavalji?
I think future is less carbon, and as an industry, we are doing fantastic work. It's time that we showcase our work. So be more compliant. Make sure that you do the carbon tagging because that's going to earn you more dividends.
Eric?
I think if you're looking at the advanced products and the eco-friendly products, I think we are the industry of tomorrow, even today. Thank you.
Joanne, please.
The Chinese market is still bright and large, and invite you to attend our convention in November, and we can exchange more information about China. Thank you.
Zainbhai?
I think just to summarize what I said earlier, I think India is poised at a very interesting time. There's going to be a real recycling boom growth happening in our country. And we wish to welcome all you foreign delegates to join us in this growth, either through investments, either through working with companies in India, because it's definitely the place of the present right now, and it's got a very, very bright future.
Thank you. May I request Shravanji, our Director MRI, to kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sujitji. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is such an honor to be a part of this wonderful event, MRI's first Southeast Asian International Business Summit 2023. And I feel incredibly privileged to have been allowed to extend a vote of thanks. I will start by thanking His Excellency Nagesh Singh Ji, Ambassador of India to the Kingdom of Thailand. Thanks, MRI and its Board of Directors and staff for bringing us all together today. Thank you to our most valued guest speakers, Mr. Virote, President, Iron and Steel Institute, Thailand, Mr. Tarun Kumar Daga, CEO, Tata Steel, Thailand, Mr. Eric Tan, Founder and President, Malaysian Non-Ferrous Metals Association, Ms. Joanne Liu, Assistant to Secretary General, CMRA, Ms. Caroline Crenals, Director, Belgium Scrap Terminal, Mr. Dhaval Shah, Vice President, MRAI, Mr. Zain Nathani, Vice President, MRAI, Commodore Sujit Samadarji, Advisor, MRAI. We are all inspired by your great words. It is great to see key members of the global recycling trade present here with us to promote our industry. An event of this dimension cannot happen overnight. It requires meticulous planning and execution and an eye for details. I cannot thank everyone enough for the involvement they have shown and the willingness they have expressed to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zones. One last time, I'd like to express my appreciation to everyone who worked on this event. We thank you for being with us this afternoon. It has been a great pleasure. I request all delegates to kindly register for our upcoming IMRC conference at Kolkata in January 2024. Sufyan, can you please play the video? Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasant duty now to conclude the session, but before that, we have some mementos to pass around. May I request our President, Mr. Sanjay Mehta, to kindly do us the honor of making the first presentations. Sanjay Bhai. Kindly felicitate Tarun Kumar ji. Dhaval Bhai, kindly felicitate Caroline. Zain Bhai, if you can felicitate Eric. And one more time, then, if we can trouble you, please felicitate Joanne. Thank you. A quick photograph, and that should conclude the session. And audience, kindly join me in felicitating this lovely panel. They shared some very interesting views for you in the standard way. Please applaud their contribution today. Thank you very much.